What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to continue refactoring our home page and add this section here with the image and then this card that is going over the image. To achieve this, we're going to use a stack, and you can see how this card here is halfway on top of the image and then halfway on top of the container out over here. And you can scroll with it and it's kind of positioned there no matter what. So yeah, by the end of this video, we will have this part here complete. Let's get started. So similar to how we built this home header up here as a separate widget, which you can see is being called from the home view, we're going to create a new widget as well in our home widgets directory here, and it will just be a Dart file, which we're going to name the trip details card. And this will just be simply a widget. And just like our home header, it is going to require the build context and a trip. So you will need to import material and our trips model. So now we have our simple widget here. The first thing we can do is return a container. And let's just set the color of that to be, let's set this one to be amber accent. Now let's just go ahead and call this from the home view so we can kind of see what is going on as we build it. And if you build it like this, the context, and this is just going to be the widget.trip. This is going to need a semicolon at the end there, and I accidentally checked that. If you run this, you'll see there's actually nothing showing, and that's just because there's no actual height to this. So instead of actually doing the color here, let's go ahead and put the image of for our trip. We can do that by adding a child element here, and then our trip has a method on it that is called getLocationImage, and that's going to return the image for us. So if you save this, you'll see our image is displayed here, quite large. If you look in our trip model, you kind of see what that getLocationImage is doing. It really is just getting us a network image that's coming from the Google Places API based on the location of our trip. So, I mean, if you're doing this with something else, you can really use any sort of network image, or any image for that matter, and just place that here instead. Now, a couple things. We do want to change the height of this to kind of be a set height. And instead of just returning this image, let's return a sized box here. And then that will take a width and a height and a child element. So the child element will be the image. And then the width is going to be the whole width. So we'll use the media query size of the width of the screen. And then for the height, this we're going to set to a static amount of 250. You could do some sort of percentage of the screen if you wanted, but I think it works typically better in this case to just use a set amount. But now you can see the image is showing much more like how it will show in the final version here. Now we can build the card that will go below this, and it's going to start as just a card. If we wrap this sized box in a column, we'll be able to add multiple things. So we can add the card in here temporarily, and then we'll be moving it around a little bit once we position it afterwards. So create a card, and then within this card, you can see we essentially have a column with 3 elements in it. So let's create the child of the card to be a column. And then we can give it the children element, which are going to be these 3 things. So the first one is the title of the trip. This is going to simply be text, and it's just going to be the trip.title, which is going to actually need to be wrapped in brackets like that. Then we can give this a little bit of style, and all we really want to do is change the font size of this and set it equal to 30. If we save this, you can see we have a card, but it isn't quite at all what we want it to look like. But for right now, that is okay. We're just going to get the other 2 parts of information in here, and then we'll worry about actually adjusting that card. So the next element here is going to be also text. And it's just going to be the date range, so from the start date to the end date. This we're going to be using the date format, so this will be as a string. The start date we're going to take as a date format. And we're going to pass in the format we want. So we want it to be the month written out in 3 letters, so you can use capital MMM, and then the day, and then comma, the year as the full year, like 2021. Then we're gonna have to pass what we want formatted, so we actually have to pass it a date. So the trip dot start date is going to be a date time object, and then we can simply call toString on that. So if you save this, you'll see the date is printing how we want it there. The next thing is simply to add a dash, and then we can essentially just copy this whole thing because the start date and end date are going to be formatted the same way. The only thing you need to change is start date to end date here. And that looks good in terms of getting that information. The last part is to put the total budget here. This one, if we want the text to be different, we can put this in a row and then just add 2 elements to it. That is one way to achieve this. So create a new row and then give it the children of first being text, and then this text is going to be $sign that we actually need to escape, and then we're going to pass in that trip budget. So this would be the daily budget that this trip has, and then call floor on this like we've been doing with these just to remove the decimal points, and then we're going to multiply the budget by the total days in the trip. So if you go to our trip model, you'll see we do have this method defined, which is get total trip days, and simply this is just figuring out the amount of days that the trip is from the start date to the end date. So we can use this, and that will get us the number of days. So if our daily budget is 50 and it's a 10-day trip, then it will be $500 for our total trip budget. And the last thing we can do is actually wrap this whole thing in parentheses and call toString on it. Then if we save that, we'll see the number is there. Since this is in a row, it does push the size of this box out to be the whole width of the screen. So that is why we now see the card being kind of like the width we would want it, which we could wrap these both in a row as well. And that will be kind of fine. So now everything kind of gets left aligned how we would want it, and we'll add some padding in a little bit. So if we want to format the text of this, I just typed that out quickly, but it is going to be a font size of 25 and a font weight of bold. Then if you save that, you'll see we now have that larger value there. Lastly, we just want another text field here. This one does not need any style, so we can remove that. And the value of it is simply going to say total budget. So the card now has all the information on it that we are interested in, but it doesn't quite look correct. Let's go from the inside out and build out our padding that way. I typically find that's easier. So we are going to want to wrap this in padding, which is just the total budget thing. I think it's a little too close to the text there. This is going to have a top and a left padding only. The reason we need the top padding is because you can see this kind of hovers in the middle there. Adding a top padding of 8 and a left padding of 4 should move that text down to where we want it. Then we can wrap this whole column in some padding. We'll keep it on all sides, but let's increase that to 16. So you'll see kind of everything is padded out there. In our final example, it seems we have a bit more space here and in between here. That can be done with padding as well. The title here, however, is actually not the best. Imagine if our title was quite long. So if, for instance, the title was maybe 3 times the length that it is right now, you'll see we just get a a overflow error here, which we don't want. So there are a few potential ways to fix this. With this example, I'm going to actually use the AutoSizeText widget, which we've used in the past, and that could potentially allow us to have 2 lines of text. So we're no longer going to use this text widget here. So go ahead and comment that out, and then within this row, we're now going to have we're actually going to have an expanded widget to be the highest level, and then the child of that is going to be a container. And we're going to set the height of this container to be 40, then give the container a child of AutoSizeText. The AutoSizeText takes 3 parameters. The first one is going to be the text itself, so we can give it the title. The second one is going to be a optional style, which we're going to set that font size to 30. And then we can set a max lines, and for now let's just use 2. So if we save this now, you'll see it looks the same, but our test case here needs to have a longer title. And you can see now it does shrink down the text to be just on 1 line. I believe if we set the height of this a little bit higher, then we can get it down onto 2 lines. So that is something you can play with by changing the size. Essentially, once this font gets down to pretty much a font size of 20 or less, then it will go to the second line. So you can see that's happening there because there is more text, so it gets smaller. But that is good. These are things that you definitely need to keep in mind, especially when pulling data from the database, because again, we might have a location that is a quite long name. Like Austin, Texas, USA is not long at all. So if we just designed for this, then when we had something that was maybe slightly longer, that, I mean, you could even imagine just any name where it was slightly longer. We don't want that to overflow. But cool, that is set there. So then we want to add a little bit of padding between these 2 areas of text. So we can just add some padding around the middle text here and do it only on the bottom. And I think 8 will probably be enough. It just separates that slightly. If we look at our design here, it is now looking the same, that card. So now that we have the card and the image, we can use a stack to actually place this card partially on top of the image, so we get that nice effect where the card is overflowing the image. This can be done with a stack, and the stack is going to be at our highest level here. So right now we have this column, which is including both the image and then this card. Let's copy all the code for the card and comment that out. So now we just have our image. Wrap this column here in a stack. So wrap that with a widget. And then we want to pass a few parameters to the stack. The first one is going to be the overflow. And we want to set that equal to visible, because what we're going to be doing is stacking that card on top of this image, and we want that to show down below. The second one is the alignment, and this one will just be the bottom center. Now we can add the children element here, and then within the children, there's going to be 2 different elements. We're going to have a container that holds the first element, which is going to be this image. Then we're going to have a positioned element that's going to be explicitly positioned over this image. So firstly, we'll do the container, and this container will have a child, which will actually be this whole column here. So we can just move that into this container. And a little bit of a mess here. Let's go ahead and comment out the bottom stuff here and close out these brackets up here as well, so we're kind of more, so we can kind of see what we're doing. That needs to close this. We need to close the container and close the stack. So if you save this, you'll see nothing's changed. We still have our image displaying here, but now it is the first element as the child of our stack. And now we can add the second element in our stack, which is going to be that card. So pretty much if we just copy this card here and place that, you'll now see that we have our card is on top of the image. And since we used alignment bottom center, it is towards the bottom of the base image. So basically all of our items, if we kept adding more items to this stack, would all just keep stacking up on this bottom center here. So that's good, but we want to make this card overflow the image. So we want it to stack, but stack at a certain position. And to achieve that is actually not that hard. All we need to do is wrap this card now in another widget, which is the position widget, or the positioned widget. And with this, we can give it a position. So let's remove these comments before we forget and format everything. So with this positioned widget, we can give it some explicit top, left, and right coordinates. So if we set the top equal to 150 and then set the left and the right to 15, you'll see now our card is positioned lower than it was before. So part of it is getting cut off. Now, if you change this to about 200, you'll see the card goes even lower. The height of the image is 250, so that value we know. So basically wherever you want this to fall on the image, you're just taking that number. So 200, this is essentially going to be 200 from the top of this image. So 150 I think is pretty good. That means we're going to come down 150 there. The 15 left and right are just going to add this padding here. Now, even though we set the overflow to visible, the card doesn't have a visible overflow right here. A simple way to get this to work is to actually make this back element here, which would be the actual image, to be larger than just the image itself. So we already set this up with a container here, but we can add in this container, instead of just a size box, we can wrap this in a column, and then we can have the size box, and then we can have another sized box. And within this size box, we can just give it a height. And if you think about how much height we need, if this box right here, if we know the exact height of that, then we would know the exact height we need. 70 is a good height. The width, we want it to be 100%, so you can just do double dot infinity here. That is just going to set the width to be the full width, essentially like 100% of the width. All right, great, so that looks good. Now, you might be thinking that 70 is not quite the right number, and it very well might not be. So one way we can check this is if we go into our home view and add a container here, and just give it some height of 10 and set a color on it. You can see where the container above it ends. So this line here is representing the 70. If we move that to like 50, that might be better. So there's still a little bit of space there. That should be fine. And since all of our information in this card is set with specific heights, we know that this card is never going to be higher than it is now. The only thing that potentially could go to 2 lines is this title. And if you go and you test that, as we were doing before with an extended longer title, since the height though of this expanded container is 40, it's never going to go above 40. So even if we have the title here, and even if this title is long, so for instance, if the title is the 2-line version of this title, you'll see it just shrinks the text, but we don't get any, the container itself does not grow. So using this line here and setting that overflow is going to work for every situation. That is it for this video and how you can use the stack views to make some more complex layouts. If you have any questions about it, go ahead and comment those down below, and subscribe to the channel to see the continuation of building out this home page view.